Love to see it. Speaking of things that are hot and taking off here, not that it's new, but it's continuing here. Any worries about the time of the Olympic break? All the Sabres have done here, Greg, is win 7 in a row coming out of the break. They have a chance to do tonight if they win an 8th in a row. It'll be the first time in their history they've ever had 2 winning streaks of 8 games or more in a single season. Because they had the 10-gamer, of course, back before, around the holidays. And so, I don't know. I mean, when we talked to you last time, there was a lot of shooting percentage, save percentage stuff, and that's still the case for them, but the beat goes on.
It's just nice to not see an 8 and a 10-game losing streak that knocks them out of playoff contention in November, which is usually what we're talking about with this team. No, it's an awesome ride. Again, I'm not trying to be a party pooper, but you're the one who brought it up. They're still, 18th in expected goals, 29th in expected goals against. They're outkicking their coverage when it comes to the analytics. They think they're third in shooting percentage of 5-on-5, fourth in save percentage of 5-on-5. This is all since the beginning of January. And so, again, like the fancy stats are arguing a different case than what the actual results are telling you. But, like, throwing all that stuff out the window for a second, I mean, what a calling card victory over the Tampa Bay Lightning the other day. My God, like the Lightning walked in, they're just like, we don't care. We're going to try to beat these guys up and establish dominance, establish ourselves as the alpha in this Atlantic division now that Florida's not going to make it. And Buffalo not only but then like didn't fold when the score got turned on either. And that was just like, what a definitive win for that team, like from a confidence standpoint and also from a we are not an aberration, and when we see you guys in the playoffs, you're in for it kind of declaration. I was just really impressed by it.
Yeah, and that was on the heels, Greg. Their third game out of the break a week ago Saturday was in Tampa, and my text thread of friends watching these games was like statement win in Tampa. Like they kind of dominated Tampa.
6-2.
Yeah. I didn't know that they were going to have like another more definitive, more exciting statement to make 8 days later, but there we were. I don't need the game of the year in the league confirmation from you, but it seemed like everywhere I looked yesterday, people who talk about hockey for a living were talking about that game.
Yeah, it's because people who talk about hockey for a living want a bunch of fights and nastiness along with their goal scoring.
Right.
Like anytime you get like game of the year proclamations, it's probably a game that had a lot of penalty minutes. And this one I think I saw had the most penalties and goals combined since like '94 or some such. Like,
yep.
It definitely lived up to the billing, and it's going to be really exciting. I guess they see each other beginning of April again for one more tilt before the playoffs. But, I'm writing a piece for tomorrow on ESPN about, kind of like trade deadline overreactions about a week later. It is kind of stunning that nobody in the Eastern Conference really made an aggressive move to get that much better. Like Detroit added a couple guys and the Islanders got Braden Shen, and obviously Buffalo tried to take as big a swing as they could, first with the Robert Thomas bit, then the Colton Parayko bit. But, for it being this wide open, and due respect to the Lightning and the Hurricanes, but neither of those teams are the Avalanche, right? Like for it being this wide open, I'm really surprised there wasn't more sealing the deal on big moves to try to have one of these contenders kind of move out in front of the others.
Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, I spent last Tuesday talking. Mike was out sick.
Oh, you're going to want to know this. Greg is going to want to know this.
We had a Robert Thomas day in here on the show. All I did was talk about Robert Thomas for 4 hours. It was amazing.
I think Bulldog thinks he was part of the reason why his name was being chanted in the arena, which you talked to Thomas about.
Right.
Yeah, me and Jeff Merrick on Merrick's show, The Sheet. Me and Jeffy did a podcast back in the day, and now we talk to each other twice a week on his show. Had Robert Thomas on yesterday, and I asked him about the chants, and it was funny. He said he thought it was a joke. He didn't think it was real, and then his buddy was actually at the game and said, "No, dude, they're chanting your name in Buffalo," and he was like really flattered by it. But I guess the Thomas thing didn't get as far as we thought it did. Like the Blues never came to him and asked him to actually waive. Obviously, with the Parayko thing, it got to the point where Yarmo was talking to Parayko about waiving. But again, like Buffalo tried to take a big swing. The Montreal tried to take a big swing and didn't get it over the finish line. I think Carolina tried some things, but it just didn't happen. And then Rod Brindamore gets all boo-boo faced because they didn't make a big trade. I'm like, dude, your GM acquired Jake Gensel and Mikko Rantanen in consecutive seasons. I mean, okay, so you didn't get one this time. But like overall, for it being this wide open, it's kind of crazy that no one was able to really land a big fish.
Well, that's where I started on Thomas there, and then we sidetracked with the chanting at the arena and that bit you had on the podcast with Merrick. The thing about Thomas that I was worried about when the Sabres didn't get that home was exactly what you just said, that Detroit or Montreal or, I don't know, Boston, like some other team, or even one of the heavyweights, Tampa or Carolina, are going to do it, and I'm going to have to deal with that on top of, the rest of their rosters. And, like, nobody ended up doing it, and we'll see if he gets moved in the summer.
I think he probably will. I mean, like, the way he kind of described things with us on the podcast yesterday was – he hasn't had to think about waiving his no trade clause yet. He said yet a few times. And that kind of tells you he might know where the wind's blowing on this. I mean, he's a young guy. I'm sure if he could, he'd probably want to stick this thing out with St. Louis and not have to, rearrange his life. But it seems like it's everything must go in St. Louis these days. And it wouldn't surprise me to see that trade made in the summer. I mean, honestly, I think the Parayko thing fell apart because of when this whole thing happened. They tried to make this guy, convince this guy to like change his life while he's on the West Coast with the Blues on a road trip.
Nursing back spasms at that, if you want it.
Nursing back spasms. Like you kind of want to just maybe sit face to face with your girlfriend before you're like, yeah, by the way, Buffalo. You know what I mean? So like, I feel like that was a matter of timing. More than anything else with the Blues and Parayko on that score.
Speaking of the idea of Thomas getting rekindled in the summer, do you have any idea if there's bad blood on either side of that because of how that went? I mean, the Sabres had to put up with, looking like they got turned down or being turned down, right? The Blues, I don't know, like they're talking about internally checking everyone's phones and all this stuff. I don't know if they suspect that it was the Sabres, but like, Would Kekalainen and Armstrong now have a problematic relationship because of the way that Parayko thing went?
Yeah, originally it's obviously no problem with anything that happened with Thomas because it never really got down to that level. But with the Parayko thing, at first it was uncomfortable, and I think you guys know why, is because the previous GM in Buffalo was talking about how they don't have palm trees and can't attract any talent, and here's like one of the first major guys they're taking a swing at, and he's like, no, thank you. But the more you hear about it, the more you think about it. It's a matter of timing. It's a matter of his own personal life. It's a matter of really having a connection with St. Louis and maybe not having gotten to a place yet where he's processing having to leave. I think you give it a few months and revisit it because I actually liked the move for Buffalo if it came together. But I don't think it's necessarily bad blood. I think it's the price of doing business. And again, I say this all the time. I mean, the Blues tried the same thing with Torrey Krug a few years ago. This whole thing about, trying to find out who's leaking this stuff to put pressure on the Blues players. It feels like Matt Damon in The Departed leading the mole hunt. The call is coming from inside the house. That's all I'm saying.
With Greg Wyshynski, the Sabres end up making trades for 4 players in the end. And Kekalainen talked about, it's obvious from who they got, experience and size. And that's kind of the typical strategy most of the time, you think, with teams at the deadline, especially a team that doesn't have any playoff experience probably. Is it worth it? I mean, these are not depth players per se. A couple will be in the lineup. Carrick has already played and contributed with a goal on Sunday and a fight. So It's not all just backups, but did they do something of value really?
I like the Carrick move. I live in Brooklyn, so I've covered the Rangers a bunch, and I've always liked his game. I think he's a good ad. The 2 defensemen from the Jets, I'm not crazy about, if I'm being honest with you, especially for the cost of acquisition. Those are very, very sort of depth players. In the case of Luke Shen, I think you bring out a lot of experience, and that might help in a rough and tumble game here and there. But, for me, that's sort of the law of diminishing returns. When you tease me Parayko, and then you end up with Stanley and Shen, it's a bit of a tough pill to swallow. But again, like that's the thing about the Sabres right now, though, is, I mean, what do they really need? I know we've talked a lot about the Blues in this conversation, but there's a lot of people that have been saying around me recently, like, maybe this is the Blues. Maybe this is the Blues back in the year they won the Cup, where all of a sudden a team just kind of finds its stride in season and then just, ratchets up like 6 or 7 gears, and all of a sudden a team no one's had on their radar becomes so good to be challenging for a championship. And that could easily be the Sabres. So when you think about what didn't happen, it's good to kind of take a step back and look at the roster that they have and say, well, damn, it's pretty complete. I mean, the success they're having is pretty good.
No, if Norris can stay healthy, I endorse that 100%. The reason I like the Thomas thing so much and talked about it for the whole show last Tuesday was that he would be some form of insurance for that. I mean, and much more than that. I mean, he's every bit the player Norris is when he's healthy. I mean, he's a top-line center. Right now, I feel like this thing is hinging on Norris being there, and that is just a tough bet to make given his history. So, bumping Tage out to a wing with Thomas at center, I was here for that with Norris, and if something happens to Norris, then I can move Thompson back. Now I'm sort of just crossing my fingers every time Norris goes into a corner.
I'm kind of thinking Norris might have been a part of that deal, like just to make the money work.
Ooh.
But I mean, that's neither here nor there.
Right.
I mean, listen, there's been a lot of sort of like celebration of how Kevin Adams built this team and the things that he did and look what they're doing. And should Kevin's name be on the cup if they win it this year? That Josh Norris one's a tough one still, man. Like we said at the time, it's a guy who can be spectacular when he's healthy, but when is he healthy? And that's exactly the player he's been for the Sabres so far. So you still have to caveat some of this Kevin Adams stuff because that remains a risky acquisition at best.
It hasn't been that long since we've spoken, Greg, but any sort of new calibration in the Eastern Conference? Is it still pretty flat? Has anything about the Lightning kind of losing a few games even before they were here on Sunday, Carolina, is the calculus different for you than it was?
The Lightning are a little wobbly. I mean, obviously, I guess the calculation we have to make is they acquired Corey Perry, which means they'll lose in the Cup final. I mean, that's kind of how it works when you get Corey Perry. I think Buffalo has kind of invited itself to the party as the third best team in the conference. However you want to structure that top three is fine with me, but they're right there with Tampa and Carolina. Carolina is the one I'm curious about because they've been saying all year long that they think that they've got the best offensive depth that they've had under Brind'Amour. And to me, that's always been the reason why they've not been able to break through and play for the Cup is finding that one goal that they need in the playoffs. And I feel like they've acknowledged that in making the trade for Gensel and making the Rantanen move that obviously didn't work out. I think they kind of know what they need, and I'm wondering if they feel like they've got enough internally now on that roster to make it happen. But the East is anyone's. I mean, with Florida out of commission, it really is a wide open conference for Buffalo, for Tampa, for Carolina, for someone we're not thinking of to make a run. And that's exciting. I mean, it's got to be exciting for Sabres fans because there isn't anybody like a Colorado kind of blocking your way to potentially playing for the Cup this year.
Right. Are those three teams atop that division in the West? What is that? That's the Central, Colorado, Dallas, and Minnesota. Are they the three best teams in the league, you think?
I think so. And glory be to the NHL playoff format where the three best teams in the league will all have to play each other in the first two rounds of the playoffs because that really values the regular season. But yeah, those three teams are real good. I think Colorado is clearly a cut above the other two and only got better at the trade deadline, not only with the Kadri acquisition, but Nick Waugh, I think, gives them the best center depth of any team in this league. And, they're just so well built and so good offensively and defensively. But don't sleep on Dallas. I don't think the Wild are as good as either of those two teams, mainly because their center depth is not anywhere near as good as what Colorado and Dallas have. But Dallas has been the conference bridesmaid for 3 years running for a reason. They're really, really good. And they didn't do anything spectacular. The Tyler Myers trade was okay. Kind of gives them that same sort of right shot veteran defenseman they got when they traded for Tanev and they traded for Cody Ceci. But I mean, if anyone's going to be able to knock Colorado off their perch, I think it's Dallas, just because of how much playoff experience they have and the depth on that they have on their roster, and in some of the positions you need depth in to beat Colorado.
Well, as I mentioned on Friday to EJ Radick, who also talked up the Avs, it's understandable, obviously. Let's get to the finals and see what happens. I mean, that's right, Bulldog. Would you take that?
Sure.
Would you take a Cup Finals if it meant playing Colorado? I think I would. I
mean, sure, but then as per usual in this dopey league we follow, like the last time we saw a juggernaut like this in the regular season, it was Boston, and then they took it on the chin in 7 games from Florida. So for all this hype about the Central Division, get ready for your Seattle Kraken first-round upset over the Colorado Avalanche, and then it's anybody's guess.
Fine. Also fine. Tampa, Columbus, not only an upset but a sweep when Columbus